I should have walked away the moment Daniel insisted I wear the silver dress. Not the emerald wrap dress I'd chosen that brought out the warmth in my hazel eyes, but the one he'd hung in my closet 3 weeks ago with a note that read, "Perfect for tomorrow night." Trust me. At 27, I'd learned to choose my battles carefully. A dress wasn't worth starting an argument, especially not tonight. What I thought was our engagement celebration deserved joy, not conflict. If you are ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you are watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another crazy story as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. The Marquette Hotel occupied an entire city block in Manhattan's Upper East Side, all Art Deco elegance and soaring ceilings that whispered old money louder than any price tag ever could. I'd been here only once before, at a networking event for emerging designers where I'd felt completely out of place among the industry legends. Daniel had spent that entire evening checking his watch. Tonight, he'd insisted on the venue himself. My heels clicked across the polished marble lobby as the concierge greeted me with a smile that seemed almost apologetic. "Miss Hopkins, your party is waiting in the grand ballroom." Your party, not your fiancé, not Mr. Mercer. The phrasing should have been my second warning. I followed a uniformed attendant through corridors lined with gilt-framed mirrors, suddenly hyper-aware of my reflection, the silver dress clinging in all the places Daniel had specified. My dark hair styled exactly as he'd requested. The portfolio case containing mock-ups for our future home renovation felt heavier with each step, the leather handle slick against my palm. The ballroom doors opened onto a scene of crystallized wealth. 300 guests, minimum, all draped in designer labels that cost more than my monthly rent. I recognized faces from political fundraisers and society pages. Senator Langford held court near the champagne fountain. The Manhattan district attorney laughed at something a tech mogul whispered. Old money mingled with new power. Everyone positioned precisely to see and be seen. Daniel stood at a table dead center in the room, prime real estate for maximum visibility. But he wasn't alone. Elise Langford occupied the seat beside him, the one that should have been mine. Platinum blonde hair fell in perfect waves over bare shoulders. Her dress probably cost what I made in 3 months. She wore the kind of smile that women perfect in prep school: polite, distant, and sharp enough to draw blood without leaving visible marks. I knew her by reputation. Senator's daughter, Yale law graduate. She'd been profiled in Vogue last month as one of New York's most influential women under 30. I stopped 6 feet from the table. The portfolio suddenly felt impossibly heavy, an anchor dragging me down through the marble floor. Daniel stood, his expression carefully neutral, practiced. "Jenny, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming." Like I was a vendor he'd summoned for a consultation, not the woman wearing his grandmother's engagement ring. "Daniel." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "What's going on?" He gestured to an empty chair across from them, noticeably separate, positioned for maximum audience view. "Please, sit. We should talk." Every instinct I'd honed through 27 years of life screamed at me to turn around, to walk out before whatever was coming could detonate, but pride locked my spine straight. I wouldn't run. Not in front of 300 witnesses who'd remember this moment forever. Daniel exchanged a glance with Elise. She gave him a slight nod, encouraging. He cleared his throat. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about my future, about the kind of partner I need as I move into the next phase of my career." My fingers tightened on the portfolio handle. "Your career." "I'm announcing my candidacy for state senate next month." He said it like he was discussing the weather. "It's an incredible opportunity, but it comes with certain requirements, certain expectations about image and connections." He gestured toward Elise with an almost proprietary casualness that made my stomach drop. "Elise understands the political landscape in ways that will be invaluable. Her family's connections, her experience with public scrutiny, her understanding of what it takes to succeed in this arena." He paused, and I watched him arrange his features into something resembling regret. "She's the kind of partner who can help me build the future I'm working toward." The words landed like physical blows, each one precisely calibrated to inflict maximum damage. Around us, conversations began to falter. Heads turned. 300 pairs of eyes found us like moths drawn to flame. "You asked me here to break up with me." It wasn't a question. My voice sounded flat, distant, like it belonged to someone else entirely. "I'm ending our engagement, yes." Daniel reached into his jacket and extracted a small velvet box. "My engagement ring." The one I'd left on his bathroom counter 2 days ago, because the band had been irritating my finger. He'd promised to take it to the jeweler for adjustment. He opened the box with theatrical precision, removed the ring, and placed it on the white tablecloth between us like evidence in a trial. I think it's best we make a clean break. His tone shifted into something that sounded rehearsed, perhaps even scripted. You're ambitious, Jenny. You've always been laser-focused on your career, on making a name for yourself in design. People might think you were with me for the networking opportunities, for what my connections could do for your firm. Heat flooded my face. You think I was using you? I'm simply stating how it might appear to others. He maintained that infuriating neutral expression. You went from freelance designer to junior associate at Hartman & Cross within 4 months of our engagement. Your client list suddenly included people from my father's political circle. People noticed these patterns. Elise leaned forward, her expression dripping with manufactured sympathy. It's nothing personal, darling. Daniel simply needs someone who was born understanding this world rather than someone still learning to navigate it. The portfolio slipped from my fingers. It hit the marble floor with a sound that echoed through the suddenly quiet ballroom. Design boards scattered across the polished stone floor plans, color palettes, fabric samples for the brownstone renovation Daniel and I had spent months planning. The project that was supposed to be our first home together lay at their feet like garbage. Daniel didn't even glance down. I hope you understand this is what's best for both of us in the long run, he continued, each word precisely placed. You'll find someone more suited to your background eventually. Your background. The words carried implications that made my skin crawl. Around us, phones emerged from designer clutches and suit pockets. Camera flashes sparked in my peripheral vision. Someone was filming this. Multiple people were filming this. By tomorrow morning, this moment would be everywhere. I should have delivered some devastating parting line. Should have maintained perfect dignity with words that would haunt him forever. Instead, I dropped to my knees and gathered my scattered designs with shaking hands. The rendering of our dream kitchen, the mood board for the master bedroom, the carefully selected paint samples that would never go on any walls. I straightened, clutching the crumpled boards to my chest like armor. Keep the ring, I managed. My voice sounded mechanical, automated. Consider it payment for the 2 years I wasted believing you were capable of basic human decency. I turned and walked toward the exit. Every step felt like moving through concrete, through quicksand, through some substance that wanted to drag me down and swallow me whole. The conversations around me had become white noise, a dull roar punctuated by sympathetic murmurs and barely concealed satisfaction. A city councilwoman I'd met at a fundraiser deliberately avoided my eyes. Even she had known. They'd all known what tonight was really about. The evening air hit me like a physical blow when I pushed through the heavy doors. November in Manhattan carried an edge that cut straight through the silver dress Daniel had chosen for my humiliation. The dress he'd wanted me to wear while he dismantled my life in front of everyone who mattered. I made it half a block before my legs gave out. A side alley away from the Marquette's main entrance offered shadows and blessed isolation. I sank against rain-slick brick, the silver dress pooling around me, ruined designs clutched to my chest. Rain had started to fall light at first, then harder, soaking through expensive fabric and dissolving mascara I'd applied so carefully hours ago. The tears came then, hot and humiliating and absolutely inevitable. 2 years of my life. 2 years of believing someone loved me, of planning a future that had just been incinerated in front of 300 witnesses who were probably already posting about it. Number Jenny Hopkins' breakup would be trending by midnight. Footsteps approached through the rain, but I couldn't summon the energy to care. Let them see, let them take their pictures. Nothing could possibly make this worse. Miss Hopkins. The voice was deep, controlled, and completely unfamiliar. I looked up through rain and tears and blurred vision. A man stood 3 feet away, backlit by street lamps that turned the rain into falling diamonds. Tall, easily over 6 feet with dark hair plastered to his head by the downpour. He wore a black leather jacket that looked expensive, even soaking wet, fitted perfectly to broad shoulders, and a frame that suggested serious time doing something more intense than hotel gyms. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Dark brown, almost black in the dim light, and fixed on me with an intensity that felt almost physical. Like he could see straight through the silver dress, through the humiliation, through everything I was trying to hold together. I don't need help, I said, swiping uselessly at my face. I'm fine. I disagree. He took a step closer, and I noticed the rain didn't seem to bother him at all. There are photographers coming. In approximately 45 seconds, They'll round that corner and capture you at your absolute lowest point. Tomorrow morning, those photos will define you forever." As if summoned by his words, voices echoed from the direction of the Marquette's entrance. Male voices, excited and opportunistic, hunting for the shot that would go viral. The stranger extended his hand. Strong fingers, a platinum watch glinting in the streetlight, and absolutely no reason for me to trust him. "My car is here," he said quietly, "unless you'd prefer to give them the show they're hoping for." I stared at his hand, at the photographer's voices getting closer, at the choice between unknown danger and certain humiliation. I grabbed his hand and let him pull me to my feet. A black car idled at the curb, sleek, expensive, windows tinted dark enough to be illegal. He opened the rear door and I slid inside, ruined designs and all. The interior smelled like leather and something darker, something that suggested violence kept carefully contained. He followed me in, settling beside me with economical grace. The door closed, sealing us in darkness. "Drive," he said to someone I couldn't see. The car pulled away from the curb just as 3 men with cameras burst around the corner, their flashes illuminating empty space where I'd been sitting seconds ago. I pressed against the far door, heart hammering, suddenly aware of how completely I'd abandoned common sense. Getting into a stranger's car because photographers were coming. Brilliant survival instinct. "Jenny." "Who are you?" I demanded. He turned those dark eyes on me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Not threat, exactly. Not safety, either. Something more complex that I didn't have words for. "Someone who just witnessed your very public humiliation," he said quietly, "and someone who might have a solution to your problem." Rain drummed against the car roof. Manhattan's lights blurred past the windows. I clutched my ruined portfolio tighter, hyper-aware that I'd just made either the best or worst decision of my life. "You can drop me at the nearest subway station," I said, trying to sound like women who regularly fled public disasters in luxury vehicles with dangerous strangers. I could. He angled himself to face me properly, and the passing streetlights illuminated his features in fragments. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, a thin scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Eyes that assessed me like I was a blueprint he was analyzing for structural weaknesses. Or you could listen to my proposal first. "I don't need rescuing by a stranger with a hero complex." His mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile. "I don't have a hero complex, Miss Hopkins. I have a business opportunity that requires someone in precisely your position." "My position?" I laughed, and it came out brittle. "You mean publicly humiliated and unemployed by morning?" "Not unemployed yet. But yes, that video is already viral." He said it matter-of-factly, without false sympathy. "Check your phone if you don't believe me." I didn't want to, but my hand moved to my clutch anyway, pulling out my phone with shaking fingers. The screen lit up with notifications I'd been ignoring. Text messages from colleagues, missed calls from my sister, emails from clients. And there, trending across 3 different platforms, Daniel Mercer announces engagement to Elise Langford. The accompanying video showed me standing frozen at that table, portfolio slipping from my hands in slow motion. The comments were worse than the video itself. "Gold digger got what she deserved. Should have known she was punching above her weight. Mercer upgraded to someone actually worth his time." "They'll fire me," I said flatly. My position at the firm was contingent on maintaining a certain professional image. A social media scandal doesn't exactly scream stability. "Probably." He didn't try to soften it. "Which brings me to my offer." The car glided through Manhattan's rain-soaked streets, and I realized I had no idea where we were going. "I need a wife," he continued, as casually as if he were discussing dinner reservations. I turned to stare at him. "Excuse me?" 6 months. A contractual marriage for business purposes." His tone remained perfectly neutral. "In exchange, I'll ensure Daniel Mercer's political career ends before it begins. And I'll pay you $750,000. The number hung in the air between us like something physical. $750,000. Enough to start my own design firm. Enough to never depend on anyone's connections but my own. Enough to rewrite everything that had just been destroyed. "This is insane," I said. "I don't even know your name." "Tony Rodriguez." He said it like it should mean something. It did. Even I, who deliberately avoided anything connected to organized crime, had heard the name. The Rodriguez family controlled significant territory on the East Coast. Shipping, real estate development, construction, and probably a dozen things that would make my law-abiding soul recoil. "You're a criminal," I'm a businessman who operates in areas where legal and illegal blur together. His tone remained perfectly neutral. I need to finalize several agreements with traditional families who value stability and family structure. A wife provides legitimacy. Why not find someone who actually wants to marry you? Because this is business, not romance. Romance complicates things unnecessarily. He shifted slightly, and I caught the glint of something metallic under his jacket. A weapon, of course. You need complete image rehabilitation and revenge against the man who humiliated you. I need a spouse for 6 months to close deals worth substantially more than what I'm offering you. It's a transaction with mutual benefits. The car glided through Manhattan's nighttime traffic, rain turning the city into a watercolor painting of lights and shadows. Stop the car, I said. We're 4 blocks from your apartment. He produced a business card from his jacket, simple black cardstock, with a phone number embossed in silver. Nothing else. I'll drop you there. You'll consider my offer. If you're interested, you'll call that number. And if I'm not interested, then you'll deal with tomorrow's fallout on your own. That almost smile returned. Fair warning, it will be brutal. The car stopped in front of my building, a modest walk-up in a neighborhood that was gentrifying slowly enough that I could still almost afford rent. The driver, whom I'd barely registered as human, stepped out and opened my door. Rain poured down in sheets. Tony Rodriguez remained in the shadows of the back seat, backlit like something from a film noir. Think about it, Miss Hopkins. 6 months of your life in exchange for the means to build the future you deserve. He paused. And the satisfaction of watching Daniel Mercer lose everything he thinks makes him important. I climbed out into the rain, legs shaky, ruined designs crumpled against my chest, business card clutched in my free hand. This is crazy, I managed. Most worthwhile decisions are. The door closed. The car pulled away, taillights disappearing into Manhattan's rainy night, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with a business card and absolutely no idea what to do with it. My apartment felt suffocating when I finally climbed the 4 flights to my door. I dropped the ruined portfolio on my kitchen table and made the mistake of pulling up social media again. The video had been shared 60,000 times. The comments had multiplied like a virus. But that came later. First, I had to survive the actual moment of my destruction. I didn't sit when Daniel gestured to that carefully positioned chair. Every survival instinct I possessed screamed at me to leave, to walk out before whatever was coming could detonate in my face. But 300 pairs of eyes had found us now, and pride, stupid, stubborn pride, locked my knees in place. I wouldn't run. Not in front of witnesses who would remember this moment for years. Daniel glanced at Elise again. She gave him an encouraging nod, like a coach signaling a play. He cleared his throat with practiced precision. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my future, he began, his voice carrying just enough to reach nearby tables. About the kind of partner I need as I move into the next phase of my career. My fingers tightened on the portfolio handle until my knuckles went white. Your career. I'm announcing my candidacy for state senate next month. He said it like he was discussing restaurant reservations. Casual. Inevitable. It's an incredible opportunity, but it comes with certain requirements, certain expectations about image and connections, and... He paused, arranging his features into something resembling regret. Political viability. The words landed like physical blows, each one precisely calculated to inflict maximum damage. Elise understands the political landscape in ways that will be invaluable. He gestured toward her with an almost proprietary casualness that made my stomach drop. Her family's connections, her experience with public scrutiny, her understanding of what it takes to succeed in this arena. She's the kind of partner who can help me build the future I'm working toward. Around us, conversations faltered completely. Heads turned. 300 people who'd come here expecting champagne and celebration now had front-row seats to a public execution. You asked me here to break up with me? It wasn't a question. I'm ending our engagement, yes. Daniel reached into his jacket and extracted a small velvet box. My engagement ring. The one I'd left on his bathroom counter 2 days ago because the band had been cutting into my finger. He'd promised to take it to the jeweler. He opened the box with theatrical precision, removed the ring, and placed it on the white tablecloth between us like evidence in a trial. I think it's best we make a clean break. His tone shifted into something rehearsed. You're ambitious, Jenny. You've always been laser-focused on your career, on making a name for yourself in design. People might think you were with me for the networking opportunities, for what my connections could do for your firm. Heat flooded my face, burning hotter than shame. You think I was using you? I'm simply stating how it might appear. He maintained that infuriating neutral expression. You went from freelance designer to junior associate at Hartman & Cross within 4 months of our engagement. Your client list suddenly included people from my father's political circle. People notice these patterns, Jenny. Elise leaned forward, her expression dripping with manufactured sympathy. It's nothing personal, sweetie. The endearment came out condescending, practiced. Daniel simply needs someone who was born understanding this world, someone politically viable rather than someone still learning to navigate it. Someone politically viable. The portfolio slipped from my fingers. It hit the marble floor with a sound that echoed through the suddenly silent ballroom. Design boards scattered across polished stone floor plans and color palettes and fabric samples for the brownstone renovation we'd spent months planning. The project that was supposed to be our first home together lay at their feet like garbage. Daniel didn't even glance down. I hope you understand this is what's best for both of us, he continued, each word precisely placed. You'll find someone more suited to your background eventually. Around us, phones emerged from designer clutches and suit pockets. Camera flashes sparked in my peripheral vision. A woman in Chanel was filming this on her iPhone, not even bothering to hide it. Someone live streaming. Multiple people recording. By tomorrow morning, this moment would define me forever. I should have delivered some devastating line. Should have maintained perfect dignity with words that would haunt him. Instead, I dropped to my knees and gathered my scattered designs with hands that shook so badly I could barely grasp the paper. The rendering of our dream kitchen. The mood board for the master bedroom. 2 years of planning reduced to crumpled evidence of my stupidity. I straightened, clutching the ruined boards to my chest. Keep the ring, I managed. My voice sounded distant, mechanical, like it belonged to someone else entirely. Consider it payment for the 2 years I wasted. I turned and walked toward the exit. Every step felt like moving through concrete. The conversations around me had become white noise, sympathetic murmurs, and barely concealed satisfaction blending into meaningless sound. A city councilwoman deliberately avoided my eyes. Even she had known. They'd all known what tonight was really about. The evening air hit me like a slap when I pushed through the doors. November in Manhattan carried a bite that cut straight through the silver dress Daniel had chosen. The dress he'd wanted me to wear for my humiliation. I made it half a block before my legs gave out. Rain had started to fall. A side alley away from the Marquette's main entrance offered shadows and blessed isolation. I sank against rain-slick brick, the silver dress pooling around me like liquid mercury, ruined designs clutched to my chest. Rain fell harder now, no longer the gentle mist that had started when I fled, but a proper downpour that soaked through expensive fabric and dissolved the mascara I'd applied so carefully hours ago. The tears came then. Hot and humiliating and absolutely inevitable. 2 years of my life. 2 years of believing someone loved me. Of planning a future that had just been incinerated in front of 300 witnesses who were probably already posting about it. Number Jenny Hopkins breakup would be trending by midnight. I could see it now, the comments, the think pieces, the amateur psychologists dissecting every moment of my humiliation for entertainment. Footsteps approached through the rain. Multiple sets, male voices, excited and opportunistic. She went this way. Get the shot before she disappears. This is gold. Absolute gold. I couldn't summon the energy to move. Let them see. Let them take their pictures. Nothing could possibly make this worse. Miss Hopkins. The voice cut through everything deep, controlled, and completely unfamiliar. I looked up through rain and tears and smeared makeup. A man stood 5 feet away, backlit by street lamps that turned the falling rain into curtains of silver. Tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair plastered to his head by the downpour. He wore a black leather jacket that looked expensive, even soaking wet, fitted perfectly to broad shoulders, and a frame that suggested something more dangerous than hotel gyms and personal trainers. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Dark brown, almost black in the dim light, and fixed on me with an intensity that felt physical, like he could see straight through the silver dress, through the humiliation, through every defense I was desperately trying to maintain. I don't need help, I said, swiping uselessly at my face. Rain and tears made the gesture pointless. I'm fine. You're not fine. He took a step closer, completely unbothered by the rain soaking through his jacket. And there are photographers coming. In approximately 30 seconds, they'll round that corner and capture you at your absolute lowest point. Tomorrow morning, those photos will be everywhere. Is that how you want to be remembered? The voices were getting closer. I could hear them now, excited, predatory, hunting for the money shot that would go viral by dawn. The stranger extended his hand. Strong fingers, a platinum watch glinting in the streetlight, and absolutely no reason for me to trust him. "My car is here," he said quietly. "Unless you'd prefer to give them the show they're hoping for." I stared at his hand, at the photographer's voices echoing closer, at the choice between unknown danger and certain destruction. 3 men with cameras burst around the corner just as I grabbed his hand. He pulled me to my feet with effortless strength, already moving toward a black car idling at the curb. Sleek, expensive, windows tinted dark enough to be illegal. He opened the rear door and I slid inside, ruined portfolio and all, just as camera flashes exploded behind us. "Drive," he said to someone I couldn't see. The car pulled away from the curb with smooth precision. Through the rear window, I watched 3 photographers standing in the rain, lowering their cameras in frustration. They'd been seconds too late. I pressed against the far door, heart hammering, suddenly aware of how completely I'd abandoned common sense, getting into a stranger's car because photographers were coming. Getting into a stranger's car because I was desperate and soaked and humiliated beyond reason. The interior smelled like leather and something darker, something expensive and dangerous that I couldn't quite name. Rain drummed against the roof like bullets. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to sound like women who regularly fled public disasters in luxury vehicles with mysterious strangers. He turned those dark eyes on me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Not threat, exactly. Not safety, either. Something more complex that I didn't have words for. "Tony Rodriguez," he said simply. Like the name should mean something. It did. Even I, who deliberately avoided anything connected to organized crime and kept my professional life squeaky clean, had heard the name. The Rodriguez family controlled significant territory on the East Coast. Shipping, real estate development, construction, waterfront properties that ask no questions about what cargo passed through them, and probably a dozen other things that would make my law-abiding soul recoil. I stopped myself before I could say something monumentally stupid. "A businessman," he finished calmly. "Who just witnessed your very public humiliation." He paused, rain-slicked features unreadable in the passing streetlights. "And someone who might have a solution to your problem." "I don't have a problem." The lie came out automatic, defensive. "I have an ex-fiancé who's an asshole. That's not the same thing." "You have an ex-fiancé who just destroyed your reputation in front of Manhattan's elite." His tone remained perfectly neutral, stating facts without judgment. "By tomorrow morning, every design firm in the city will know you're radioactive. Clients will pull out, projects will disappear, your career will be over before you're 30. Each word landed like a physical blow because they were true, every single one of them. "Why do you care?" I asked. "Because I have a proposition that benefits us both." He shifted slightly, and I caught the glint of something metallic under his jacket, a weapon. Of course he carried a weapon. But first, you need to see exactly what you're dealing with. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen twice, and handed it to me. The video was already trending. Number Jenny Hopkins breakup had 60,000 shares and climbing. The footage showed me standing frozen at that table, portfolio slipping from my hands in slow motion. Daniel's face arranged in false regret, Elise's smile sharp enough to draw blood. The comments were worse than the video itself. Gold digger got what she deserved. Should have known she was punching above her weight. Mercer upgraded to someone worth his time. Bet she's crying into her knockoff Prada right now. I handed the phone back with shaking hands. "They'll fire me," I said flatly. My position was contingent on maintaining a professional image. "They will." He didn't try to soften it, unless you rewrite the narrative completely. The car glided through rain-soaked streets. Manhattan blurred past the windows like a watercolor painting dissolving in the storm. "What kind of proposition?" I asked carefully. "Not here." He produced a business card from inside his jacket, simple black cardstock with a phone number embossed in silver. "Nothing else. Think about it, Miss Hopkins. When you're ready to discuss turning your humiliation into power, call that number." The car stopped in front of my building. The driver materialized to open my door, rain pouring down in sheets. Tony Rodriguez remained in the shadows of the back seat, those dark eyes watching me with unsettling intensity. "What makes you think I want power?" I asked. His mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile. "Because 30 minutes ago you picked yourself up off that floor and walked out with your head high. That's not someone who accepts defeat." He paused. "That's someone who wants revenge. And you can give me that?" I can give you something better. The almost smile turned cold. I can help you make them regret ever underestimating you. I climbed out into the rain. Ruined designs clutched to my chest. Business card burning against my palm. Think about it, Miss Hopkins, he called after me. Revenge is a dish best served with a ring. The door closed. The car disappeared into Manhattan's rainy night. I stood on the sidewalk, soaked through and shaking, staring at the card in my hand like it might explode. Tony Rodriguez. A mafia boss offering me revenge. This was insane. Absolutely insane. I climbed the 4 flights to my apartment and made the mistake of checking social media one more time. The video had hit 100,000 shares. I stared at Tony Rodriguez's card until the numbers blurred together. Maybe insane was exactly what I needed. I lasted 2 days. 2 days of watching the video spread like a disease across every platform I'd ever joined. 2 days of number Jenny Hopkins breakup climbing to 150,000 shares and then beyond. 2 days of reading comments that dissected every aspect of my life, my appearance, my worth as a human being. Social climber finally got put in her place. Gold digger thought she could lock down a future senator, lol. Bet she was only with him for the connections. Good for Mercer for seeing through her. That dress, though. Trying way too hard. Anyone else notice how desperate she looked picking up those papers? Pathetic. The amateur psychologists were worse. They analyzed my body language, my facial expressions, the exact angle of my shoulders when the portfolio fell. Think pieces appeared on websites I'd never heard of. The dangers of social climbing in Manhattan's elite circles and when ambition overshadows authenticity. A cautionary tale. I stopped reading after the first day, stopped checking, but the damage was done. On the morning of day 2, I arrived at Hartman and Cross to find Gerald Hartman's senior partner, 63 years old, wearing disappointment like a bespoke suit waiting in my office. Jenny. He didn't sit down, didn't offer pleasantries. I think it would be best if you took some personal leave, just until things settle down. Things settle down, I repeated flatly. Several clients have expressed concerns about the publicity, about maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. It's nothing personal. Simply a matter of the firm's reputation. Of course. I started packing my desk into a cardboard box someone had thoughtfully provided. Wouldn't want my humiliation to damage anyone else's reputation. He left without another word. Maya showed up at my apartment that evening with Thai food and fury. She stormed through my door like a hurricane in designer boots, dark curls wild and eyes blazing. That absolute bastard, she announced, dropping takeout containers on my kitchen counter. I hope Daniel Mercer chokes on his political ambitions. I hope Elise Langford's hair falls out. I hope they both. Maya, I cut her off gently. It's fine. It's not fine. It's character assassination. It's public humiliation designed to destroy your career so he can build his. She grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to meet her eyes. Jenny, you need to fight back. Sue him. Leak something embarrassing. Hire a publicist. Do something. But I felt nothing. Just this vast emptiness where anger should have been. What am I supposed to do? I asked. The damage is done. Maya stayed for 3 hours, plotting revenge scenarios I couldn't bring myself to care about. When she finally left reluctantly, with promises to check on me tomorrow, I stood alone in my apartment and pulled Tony Rodriguez's card from where I'd hidden it under a stack of unpaid bills. Simple black cardstock, silver numbers, no name, no explanation. I opened my laptop and typed his name into Google. The results were illuminating. Rodriguez Development LLC owned half the waterfront. Rodriguez Enterprises controlled shipping routes I didn't understand. Charity galas featured him in the background, always in expensive suits, always alone. Articles called him business entrepreneur and real estate mogul, with the kind of careful phrasing that suggested everyone knew the truth but no one would print it. Rumored mafia connections, traditional family values, untouchable power. A man who could make problems disappear. My phone rang. My mother. I almost didn't answer. Jennifer. Her voice carried that particular brand of disappointment she'd perfected over 27 years. I've been seeing the most awful things online. What happened with Daniel? He ended our engagement, Mom. But why? You must have done something. Said something. Daniel was such a good man. From such a good family. He humiliated me in front of 300 people because I wasn't politically viable enough. My voice came out flat, dead. He traded me in for a senator's daughter. Well, she paused, and I could hear her mental gymnastics working. Perhaps if you'd been more understanding of his career needs, more supportive. You were always so focused on your own work, Jennifer. Men need to feel like the priority. I hung up without saying goodbye. Stared at Tony Rodriguez's card until the numbers blurred. Rock bottom, I realized, made an excellent foundation. You could build anything on rock bottom. The only question was what? I picked up my phone and dialed before I could change my mind. The phone rang once, twice. Miss Hopkins. His voice was exactly as I remembered, deep, controlled, dangerous. I was beginning to think you'd decided to let them win. I want to hear your proposal. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. All of it. Good. I could hear satisfaction in his tone. There's a black car outside your building. You have 5 minutes. Now? It's 9 o'clock at night. The line went dead. I looked down at my sweatpants and oversized t-shirt. Looked at the mirror where yesterday's mascara still smudged under my eyes. Looked at the woman I'd become in 48 hours, unemployed, humiliated, abandoned. My phone buzzed with a text. 4 minutes. I grabbed my jacket and ran. The black car was precisely where he'd promised, idling at the curb like a predator waiting. I slid into the back seat, still wearing sweatpants and my rattiest jacket, suddenly aware of how completely unprepared I was for whatever came next. The driver, a man built like a concrete wall with a scar bisecting his left cheek, offered no conversation as we navigated through nighttime traffic toward the waterfront. Not the glossy, tourist-friendly waterfront with its trendy restaurants and art galleries. The working docks where cargo ships unloaded and warehouses squatted like concrete fortresses against the night sky. We stopped in front of a building that looked abandoned from the outside. Corrugated metal siding, no signage. Windows so filthy they were essentially opaque. The driver gestured toward a side door. I realized I was expected to enter alone. The interior contradicted the exterior completely. Modern office space occupied the ground floor, all sleek furniture and state-of-the-art technology that probably cost more than my yearly salary. But it was the men I noticed most. 3 of them positioned strategically around the room, all watching me with the kind of alertness that suggested military training and concealed weapons. They didn't pretend to be doing anything else. Just stood there, assessing me like a potential threat. Miss Hopkins. Tony emerged from an office in the back, and somehow nighttime had made him seem less dangerous than he actually was. In the harsh fluorescent lighting, everything about him screamed controlled power. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black button-down that probably cost what I used to make in a week. His dark eyes found mine with that same unsettling intensity. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing toward his office. "Please." The office held a desk, 2 chairs, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the docks. Ships being loaded with cargo I probably didn't want to know about. He closed the door, cutting off the view of his armed guards. "Sit," he said. It wasn't quite a command, but it wasn't a request either. I sat. He settled into the chair across from me, completely at ease in a way that made me more nervous. Like a predator so confident in its dominance, it didn't need to posture. 6 months, he began without preamble. Marriage contract. You play my devoted wife for business negotiations with several traditional families who value stability and family structure above all else. In return, you receive $750,000, complete image rehabilitation, and the satisfaction of watching Daniel Mercer's political career implode. The number hung in the air between us, $750,000. Why me? I asked carefully. You could hire anyone, an actress, a model, someone who actually knows how to navigate your world. Because you're not an actress. You're not a model. He leaned forward slightly, dark eyes locked on mine. You're a woman who was just publicly destroyed by a man who underestimated her worth. You're motivated by something more powerful than money. You want revenge. That authenticity is what I need. And what do you get out of this? Really? Legitimacy. He said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. I'm negotiating with families who've operated the same way for generations. They value tradition, family, stability. A wife, a respectable, professional wife with her own career provides all 3. So I'm window dressing. You're camouflage. He didn't soften it. And in return, I give you everything you need to rebuild. New clients through my connections, a reputation as the woman who captured Tony Rodriguez's attention, and by the time our 6 months end, Daniel Mercer will be fortunate to work as a paralegal in Jersey. I stared at him, trying to find the trap, the hidden clause, the place where this went from business transaction to something dangerous. What's the actual arrangement? I asked. Living situation, expectations. You move into my penthouse. We attend social functions together. We present the image of a stable, committed relationship. He pulled a document from his desk drawer, thick, official-looking, clearly prepared in advance. Separate bedrooms. No physical intimacy unless mutually agreed upon for appearances. You maintain complete professional freedom. The only requirement is that you don't tell anyone the truth. As far as the world knows, we're genuinely married. And your business? The illegal parts? You don't question my operational decisions. His tone remained neutral. You're free to voice concerns about anything related to my legitimate development companies, but you don't ask about the rest. Ignorance protects you. I looked out at the docks, at the ships being loaded with cargo that probably violated a dozen federal laws. What about protection? You said people would see me as a target. Anyone connected to me becomes both a target and untouchable. He said it matter-of-factly. I have enemies who would use you as leverage. I also have resources that ensure they never get close enough to try. You'll have security whenever you leave the building. Non-negotiable. He slid the contract across the desk. Read it. Take your time. If you agree, sign. I read every word. The contract was surprisingly straightforward. 6 months, marriage in name and legal standing. $750,000 deposited to my account upon finalization of his business negotiations, with an additional clause guaranteeing $200,000 immediately, as a signing bonus. Separate living quarters, complete confidentiality, protection services included. At the bottom, a handwritten addendum. Daniel Mercer's political career will be systematically dismantled through legal channels within 90 days of contract signing. My hand shook slightly as I signed my name. Tony added his signature below mine, witnessed it by taking a photo, and extended his hand across the desk. Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Rodriguez. His grip was firm, warm, and absolutely nothing about this felt safe. But safe was what had gotten me humiliated in a ballroom full of Manhattan's elite. Maybe dangerous was exactly what I needed. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building in Tribeca that didn't advertise its existence. No doorman, no lobby directory, just biometric security and cameras positioned at angles that covered every approach. Tony's driver had collected my belongings 3 hours ago, 2 suitcases and a box of design books that represented everything I owned worth keeping. Now I stood in the marble entryway of my new home, feeling like an intruder in a museum. Your room is through here. Tony moved past me, his presence somehow filling the vast space despite the cathedral ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River. He opened a door to reveal a bedroom suite larger than my entire previous apartment. King bed, sitting area, an en-suite bathroom with a soaking tub that could fit 3 people, windows that turned the Manhattan skyline into living artwork. Everything you need should be here, he continued, gesturing to a walk-in closet I hadn't noticed. Lucia handled the arrangements. Lucia? My sister. She manages certain aspects of the family business. He said it casually, but something in his tone suggested this meeting would be more interrogation than introduction. She'll want to meet you. The apartment itself defied my expectations. I'd anticipated something ostentatious, dripping with wealth like Elise's family estate, all gold fixtures and crystal chandeliers. Instead, everything spoke of quiet power, modern furniture in neutral tones, artwork that was probably worth more than I wanted to calculate, and an underlying sense that this space doubled as a fortress. The security system requires your fingerprint now. Tony led me to a panel beside the entrance. Press here. I complied, watching as the system registered my biometrics with a soft chime. Seems excessive for a temporary arrangement, I said. Nothing about my life allows for inadequate security. He stepped back, studying me with that same assessing look from the car. You'll find that precautions are necessary, not excessive. Because of your business. Because I have enemies who would use anyone connected to me as leverage. His tone remained matter-of-fact. Which is why, starting now, you don't leave this building without security. Non-negotiable. Before I could argue, the elevator chimed. Tony's posture shifted subtly, not quite defensive, but alert. I realized he'd positioned himself between me and the entrance before I'd even registered the movement. The doors opened to reveal a woman who could only be Lucia. She shared Tony's dark eyes and sharp features, but where his presence suggested controlled violence, hers radiated calculated intelligence. Mid-30s, wearing a charcoal pantsuit that managed to look both professional and vaguely threatening, she stepped into the apartment with the confidence of someone who belonged here more than I ever would. So this is the interior designer. Lucia's gaze swept over me, cataloging everything from my rumpled jacket to the defensive set of my shoulders. Jenny Hopkins, 27. Recently promoted, publicly humiliated by an ex-fiancé who traded up for political connections. She circled me slowly. Interesting choice, Tony. Lucia. Tony's voice carried a warning. What? I'm simply acknowledging that your new wife has had a difficult week. She moved closer, and I forced myself not to retreat. I need to know you understand what you've signed up for. My brother's world isn't safe, and marriage to him, even a temporary one, makes you a target. She's been briefed, Tony said. Briefed isn't the same as understanding. Lucia stopped directly in front of me, dark eyes boring into mine. Tell me, Jenny. If someone put a gun to your head and demanded information about Tony's business dealings, what would you do? My throat went dry. I don't know anything about his business dealings. Exactly. She smiled, but it held no warmth. And you'll keep it that way. No questions about where he goes, who he meets with, or what happens in those waterfront warehouses. Ignorance isn't just bliss in this situation. It's survival. Lucia, enough. Tony's tone hardened. She held up her hands in mock surrender. Just making sure we're all clear on expectations. I'll leave you two to settle in. She headed toward the elevator, then paused. Jenny, I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of each other. Welcome to the family. The elevator doors closed behind her, and silence settled over the apartment like dust. She doesn't trust me, I said. She doesn't trust anyone. It's kept her alive this long. Tony moved to the windows, hands in his pockets. But she'll come around. Lucia respects competence, and your professional credentials are solid. How reassuring. He glanced back at me, and something flickered in his expression. Almost amusement. You should rest. We have an event tomorrow night. The Langford Foundation Gala. Black tie, significant attendance. My stomach dropped. The Langford, as in Senator Langford, Elise's father? The same. He watched my reaction carefully. Daniel and his new fiancé will be center stage. It's the perfect venue to introduce you as my wife. You want me to face them. Tomorrow. I want you to stand beside me while they realize what they lost. He headed toward what I assumed was his own bedroom. There's a dress in your closet. Lucia selected it. Wear whatever jewelry you prefer from the safe. Combination is your birthday. He disappeared into his room before I could process that last detail. The safe in my closet contained jewelry that made my breath catch. Diamond necklaces, emerald earrings, pieces that belonged in museum displays, not on my neck. The dress, however, was impossible to ignore, deep navy silk that somehow managed to look both elegant and dangerous, cut to fit perfectly despite Lucia never having taken my measurements. I didn't want to think about how she'd acquired that information. Sleep didn't come. At 2 a.m, I gave up and wandered into the kitchen for water. Tony sat at the island counter, laptop open, still fully dressed. He looked up when I entered, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Trouble sleeping? He asked finally. Strange bed, strange life. I poured water from the filtered dispenser. Do you ever sleep? Not much. Comes with the territory. He closed the laptop. You'll adjust. Most people do. Most people haven't signed a contract to marry a stranger. Fair point. He studied me across the kitchen, and I suddenly became aware that I wore only an oversized t-shirt and sleep shorts. For what it's worth, I'll do everything possible to make sure these 6 months don't destroy your life. Just temporarily disrupt it? Exactly. That almost smile returned. Tomorrow we'll set the tone. People will talk, speculate, create elaborate theories about how we met. Let them. The more attention on our relationship, the less attention on other matters. You mean your actual business? I mean anything that doesn't concern you. He stood, and I realized again how much space he occupied just by existing. Get some rest, Jenny. Tomorrow, we make them all remember your name. He left me alone in the kitchen. I finished my water in the dark, watching the city lights blur through the windows, and wondered what version of myself I'd become by the time those 6 months ended. The dress fit like it had been designed specifically for my body. Deep navy silk that moved like water, cut to emphasize curves I'd forgotten I had. The neckline dipped just low enough to be elegant rather than desperate. I stared at my reflection in the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. Professional armor, I told myself. Just another kind of blueprint to follow. Tony waited in the living room, and when I emerged, Something shifted in his expression. Not quite approval, more like recognition that I'd understood the assignment. "You look perfect," he said simply. "Thank you for specifying that this is a performance." His mouth curved slightly. "Everything is a performance, Jenny. The only difference is how well we execute it." Rain fell as we pulled up to the Metropolitan Museum, where the Langford Foundation had rented the entire building. Fat drops that turned the city into something from a noir film, all blurred lights and shadows. Photographers lined the entrance like a gauntlet, umbrellas abandoned in favor of getting the shot. Tony stepped out first, seemingly unbothered by the rain soaking into his perfectly tailored tuxedo. Then he turned and offered his hand. "Ready?" he asked. No, absolutely not, but I took his hand anyway. The moment my heels touched the wet pavement, the photographers erupted. "Mr. Rodriguez, who is your date? Is it true you're in a relationship? Miss, what's your name? Mr. Rodriguez, how long have you known?" Tony ignored them all, his hand settling on my lower back, possessive, protective, impossible to misinterpret. He guided me through the flashes and shouted questions with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Inside, the museum had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. 400 of New York's elite congregated under soaring ceilings and priceless artwork. I recognized faces immediately: politicians, CEOs, old money families, whose names appeared on buildings. The same crowd that had witnessed my humiliation at the Marquette. And there, near the center of the room, Daniel and Elise held court like visiting royalty. Daniel saw me first. His face went white, actually white, like someone had drained all the blood from his features in an instant. He was mid-sentence with someone, a congressman, I thought, and his words died in his throat. Elise followed his gaze, and her perfect smile fractured at the edges. Whispers rippled outward from us like a stone dropped in still water. Everyone knew who Tony Rodriguez was. Everyone knew what his presence meant. And now everyone was seeing me on his arm, transformed from humiliated ex-fiancé into something they couldn't quite categorize. Senator Langford approached first, all-practiced politician charm and calculating eyes. "Mr. Rodriguez, what an unexpected pleasure." He extended his hand. "Richard Langford, I don't believe we've had the pleasure of meeting formally." Tony shook his hand with the bare minimum of courtesy. "Senator, and this lovely young lady is?" Langford's eyes slid to me, and I saw the exact moment he recognized me. The brief flicker of surprise before his political mask snapped back into place. "My wife," Tony said calmly. The word detonated like a bomb. Conversations around us stuttered and died. Heads turned. Someone's champagne glass actually slipped from their fingers and shattered on the marble floor. "Your wife," Langford repeated, smile frozen. "I wasn't aware you'd married." "Recently." Tony's hand tightened fractionally on my back. "Jenny and I prefer to keep our private life private." Elise materialized at her father's elbow, that practiced smile firmly in place. But her eyes held something sharp and mean that hadn't been there before. "Jenny." She said my name like it tasted bad. "What a surprise. I didn't realize you moved in such elevated circles." The condescension dripped from every word. "How exactly did you and Mr. Rodriguez meet?" I felt Tony tense slightly beside me, ready to intervene. But something cold and clear settled over me. Something that had been building since the moment Daniel had set my engagement ring on that table. "At a business function," I said smoothly. Tony was impressed by my portfolio. Unlike some people, he recognizes talent when he sees it. The implication hung in the air. Elise's smile turned brittle. "Of course," she managed. "How? Fortunate for you." Daniel pushed through the crowd, his careful composure cracking at the edges. "Jenny, can we talk? Privately?" Tony shifted, positioning himself slightly between us. "I'm afraid my wife and I are quite busy this evening." His tone was polite, but the message was clear. "Back off." "Your wife," Daniel repeated, and something desperate flickered across his face. "Jenny, you can't possibly. We should discuss." "There's nothing to discuss, Daniel." My voice came out steady, cold. "You made your choice very publicly. I've made mine. But you don't understand what you're—" He glanced at Tony, and I saw fear flash in his eyes. "Jenny, please, just 5 minutes." "No." The word felt powerful, final. "Enjoy your evening, Daniel." "I know I will." Tony's hand slid from my back to my hand, fingers intertwining with mine. "Shall we, darling?" He led me away from Daniel's stunned expression, from Elise's fury, from Senator Langford's calculating assessment, Whispers followed us across the ballroom floor, but they sounded different now. Not pitying, not mocking. Curious, intrigued, impressed. The orchestra had started playing something slow and elegant that filled the massive space with sound. Tony led me to the center of the ballroom, where everyone could see us, and pulled me into his arms for a dance. "You did well," he murmured, close enough that only I could hear. "Better than well. I followed your lead." "No." His dark eyes locked on mine. "You found your own power. There's a difference." The music swelled around us, and through the crowd, I caught Daniel's eye one more time. He stood frozen, watching us, finally understanding exactly what he'd thrown away. And I smiled. We'd been dancing for less than a minute when Tony stopped. Right there, in the center of the ballroom, with 400 pairs of eyes already watching us, the orchestra continued playing, but couples around us faltered, sensing something was about to happen. Tony released my waist and took both my hands in his. "What are you?" I started. He dropped to one knee. The music stuttered and died. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Camera phones emerged from pockets and clutches like a synchronized swarm. "Jenny Hopkins." His voice carried across the sudden silence, deep and clear and absolutely certain. "You walked into my life when I least expected it. You reminded me that there's more to this world than business and strategy and calculated moves." His dark eyes locked on mine with an intensity that felt almost real. "Marry me. Make me the luckiest man in this room." The crowd gasped. Camera flashes erupted like lightning. This wasn't part of the contract. This wasn't part of any plan we'd discussed. We were already married, had been for exactly 16 hours. This was pure improvisation. Tony rewriting the narrative in real time, making our arrangement so publicly undeniable that no one would ever question it. Making Daniel Mercer watch me get everything he'd thrown away. 400 people waited for my answer. I could see Daniel in my peripheral vision, frozen mid-step. Elise beside him, her face twisted into something ugly beneath her perfect makeup. Senator Langford calculating political implications at lightning speed. I looked down at Tony, at this dangerous man on his knee, in front of Manhattan's elite, offering me a ring that probably cost more than my parents' house. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I'll marry you." He smiled, a real smile this time, not that careful almost expression, and pulled a small velvet box from his jacket. The ring inside was breathtaking, platinum band. A diamond so large it seemed impossible, surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like captured stars. He slid it onto my finger as the room erupted. Applause thundered through the space. Women I'd never met were crying. Men clapped Tony on the back as he stood and pulled me into his arms. The orchestra launched into something celebratory, and suddenly we were surrounded by congratulations and champagne and people who'd ignored me completely at the Marquette. Through the chaos, I caught Daniel's face. He stood completely still while the celebration swirled around him. His careful composure shattered. Elise gripped his arm, whispering something urgent, but he didn't seem to hear her. Senator Langford materialized instantly, political instincts overriding his daughter's obvious distress. "Mr. Rodriguez, congratulations. This is wonderful news. Absolutely wonderful. We should discuss." "Thank you, Senator." Tony's arm remained firmly around my waist. "If you'll excuse us, I'd like a moment alone with my fiancé." Around us, phones were already lighting up with notifications. I caught glimpses of screens as people refreshed their feeds. Number Rodriguez engagement. Number Jenny Hopkins. Breaking. Mafia boss Tony Rodriguez proposes at Langford Gala. The hashtag from my humiliation was being buried in real time by this new narrative. Jenny Hopkins wasn't the woman who got discarded anymore. She was the woman who'd captured Tony Rodriguez's heart. Daniel pushed through the crowd, his face pale but determined. Elise trailed behind him, her fury barely contained beneath a mask of false politeness. "Jenny." He reached for my arm. "I had no idea you'd moved on so quickly. If I'd known if you'd told me you were seeing someone." "Why would I tell you?" I pulled away from his touch. "You ended our engagement in front of 300 people. You don't get updates on my life anymore, Daniel." "But this is..." He glanced at Tony, and something desperate flickered in his eyes. "Jenny, you need to understand what you're getting into. His reputation, his business dealings." Tony stepped forward, and though he didn't touch Daniel, his presence alone made Daniel step back. "Let me be clear, Mercer." Tony's voice was quiet, deadly. "Jenny moved on to someone who recognizes her value. Someone who won't humiliate her for political convenience. Someone who understands that she's worth more than a stepping stone to a Senate seat." He paused, letting the words land. You should try it sometime. Recognizing value before you throw it away. Daniel's face flushed red. Elise grabbed his arm, pulling him back before he could respond. They disappeared into the crowd, and I felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't realized was clenched. We should go, Tony murmured near my ear. Let them talk. Let the photos spread. We've given them exactly what they need. He guided me toward the exit, his hand never leaving the small of my back. Congratulations followed us, but Tony acknowledged them with minimal courtesy, focused on getting us out. Rain still fell when we emerged, heavier now, turning the museum steps into a waterfall. Photographers had multiplied, drawn by the news spreading through social media. Mr. Rodriguez, Jenny, congratulations. When's the wedding? How long have you been together? Jenny, what do you want to say to Daniel Mercer? Tony pulled me closer, sheltering me from the worst of the rain and the camera flashes. We stood there for a moment, rain soaking through expensive fabric, the two of us locked in a moment that would be on every gossip site by morning. His hand came up to cup my face, and for a second I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he leaned his forehead against mine, close enough that anyone watching would see intimacy, connection, something real. The cameras went wild. Then he led me to the waiting car, his jacket draped over my shoulders, his presence a shield against the chaos. Inside the car, rain drumming on the roof, I finally found my voice. Why did you do that? I asked. The proposal. That wasn't part of the contract. Tony settled back against the leather seat, his tuxedo soaked through, dark hair plastered to his head. In the dim light, he looked younger somehow, less dangerous, almost human. Because you deserved better than a quiet contract, he said simply. You deserved a moment that erases his. A moment so public, so undeniable, that no one will ever remember you as the woman Daniel Mercer discarded. He turned those dark eyes on me. Now you're the woman who brought Tony Rodriguez to his knees. That's a much better story. My phone buzzed with incoming notifications, hundreds of them. I pulled it out, hands shaking slightly. Number Rodriguez engagement was trending number 1. The video of the proposal had already been shared 50,000 times. Comments flooded in, but these were different from before. She's stunning. Tony Rodriguez just proposed to her. Daniel Mercer is probably crying Ren. From heartbreak to engagement in 48 hours, this woman is living the dream. Anyone else notice how he looks at her? That's real. I looked up at Tony, at this man who'd just rewritten my entire narrative in front of 400 witnesses. Thank you, I whispered. He reached over and took my hand, his thumb brushing over the massive diamond now adorning my finger. Don't thank me yet, he said quietly. We still have 6 months to survive. But as the car glided through rain-soaked streets, Manhattan blurring past the windows, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't just a transaction anymore. This was war. And we'd just fired the opening shot. I woke to my phone vibrating off the nightstand. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, and for a disoriented moment, I forgot where I was. Then I saw the navy silk dress draped over a chair, the massive diamond on my finger catching the light, and everything came rushing back. I grabbed my phone. The screen was flooded with notifications. Mafia boss's surprise engagement stuns Manhattan elite. Who is Jenny Hopkins, the mystery woman who captured Tony Rodriguez? From heartbreak to happiness, interior designer's fairy tale engagement. The narrative had flipped completely. Overnight, I'd gone from humiliated gold digger to mysterious woman who'd somehow captured the attention of one of New York's most powerful men. The comments section read like fiction. She's gorgeous and successful. Daniel Mercer fumbled hard. The way Tony Rodriguez looked at her in that video. I'm not crying, you're crying. This is what happens when you underestimate a woman. My phone rang. Gerald Hartman from the firm. Jenny. His voice carried none of yesterday's disappointment. I hope I'm not calling too early. I wanted to personally apologize for suggesting you take leave. Clearly, we misread the situation. Several clients have specifically requested you for upcoming projects. When can you come back? I hung up without answering. Maya burst through the door an hour later, not bothering to knock, eyes wild with disbelief. You married Tony Rodriguez? Tony Rodriguez? And you didn't tell me? I had to find out from Instagram? It happened fast. Fast? Jenny? 3 days ago you were crying on your couch. Now you're engaged too. She stopped, studying my face. Wait, this is real? You actually have feelings for him? Did I? The question sat heavy in my chest. I don't know, I admitted. It started as something else. But now it's complicated. Maya finished. She grabbed my hands, staring at the ring. Holy hell, this thing could fund a small country. The elevator chimed. Lucia stepped out, wearing the same calculating expression from yesterday, a tablet tucked under her arm. Maya, this is Tony's sister Lucia. Lucia, my best friend Maya. Maya's eyes went wide, but she recovered quickly. I'll just go get coffee. For several hours. When we were alone, Lucia's expression hardened. We need to talk. Daniel Mercer's been making inquiries. About you, about Tony, about the timeline of your relationship. Let him investigate. There's nothing to find. Isn't there? Lucia's eyes were sharp. You signed a contract 3 days after your very public breakup. You're living with a man you barely know. Daniel might be an entitled politician, but he's not stupid. If he digs deep enough. Then what? I met her gaze. What's he going to find? 2 people who got married? That's legal, Lucia, even if the timing is convenient. She studied me for a long moment. You're tougher than I thought. It almost sounded like approval. Good. You'll need to be. That afternoon, Tony emerged from his office with news. It's done. The Castellano family approved the shipping contracts. The marriage. He paused, something flickering in his expression. The marriage convinced them I'm committed to stability, to family values. So the contract worked. It worked. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few buttons. Your payment has been transferred, $750,000, as agreed. I checked my banking app. The number sat there, impossibly large, enough to start my own firm, enough to never depend on anyone again. But staring at it, I felt empty. This was supposed to be the victory, the revenge, the moment I reclaimed everything Daniel had taken from me. So why did it feel like I was losing something instead? That evening, I found Tony on the penthouse balcony. Rain had started to fall light, misty, the kind that felt more atmospheric than wet. He stood at the railing in just a white shirt, the city spreading out below us like a constellation of electric stars. Daniel's campaign collapsed today, he said without turning around. Financial irregularities. Anonymous tip to the ethics committee. He'll be fortunate to practice law in Jersey after this. You did that. I did that. No apology. No justification. Just fact. I moved to stand beside him, rain dampening my hair, the city lights blurring through the moisture. What happens when the 6 months end? I asked quietly. Tony turned to face me, and something in his eyes made my breath catch. Not the controlled businessman, not the dangerous crime boss, something more vulnerable, more real. That depends, he said carefully, on whether this is still just business. Is it? My voice barely carried over the rain. Still just business? He reached up, tucking a strand of wet hair behind my ear. His hand lingered against my cheek, warm despite the cold rain. No, he said simply. Not for me. Not anymore. The space between us felt electric, dangerous, full of possibilities that hadn't existed in the contract we'd signed. Rain fell around us, and I thought about that first night soaked and humiliated in a side alley, this stranger offering salvation wrapped in leather and danger. I launched my firm today, I told him. Hopkins & Associates. First client signed this afternoon. A penthouse renovation in Soho. His mouth curved into that rare, genuine smile. Congratulations. Thank you for giving me the ammunition to do it. I didn't give you anything, Jenny. You already had the talent. I just gave you a stage to show it. We stood there as rain fell, neither of us moving closer but neither pulling away, the line between contract and reality dissolving like ink in water. 1 week later, Maya sent me a link with 17 exclamation points. Daniel's Senate campaign had officially ended. Financial scandal, ethics violations, and a very public withdrawal from the race. Elise Langford had quietly ended their engagement. Senator Langford was distancing himself from the whole mess. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt free. That evening, Tony and I attended a charity gala, not for show this time, not for performance, just because we'd been invited and decided to go. Photographers captured us arriving together, but the photos looked different now. Less staged, more natural, more real. Inside, I caught Tony's eye across the crowded room. He was talking to someone, a business associate, probably discussing shipping routes or construction permits or something I deliberately didn't ask about, but when he saw me looking, he smiled. Not the careful, calculated expression he used for business. A real smile. Just for me. I smiled back. Whatever this was, whatever it was becoming, I was writing it myself. No Daniel dictating my choices. No humiliation defining my worth. No one else's narrative but my own. Jenny Hopkins, interior designer, wife of Tony Rodriguez, woman who'd turned her lowest moment into her greatest triumph. And if somewhere along the way, the contract marriage had become something else entirely, well, that was just another story to rewrite. On my own terms.